Hello, everyone, and welcome to day 2 of the Crafty Online Distilling Conference. Today, we're mixing it up a bit. We've got a combination of some of the pre-recorded with the live Q&As, and we've got some live-only sessions for you. So let's just inject a little bit of excitement into it. First off, I'm very pleased to introduce a couple of chaps that I met at the live expo that we had in October. We've got Sam and Carolyn from Brewman. Did you want to introduce yourselves, chaps?
Carolyn, do you want to go first?
Yeah, absolutely. So like David said, we're Brewman, and I'm Carolyn. I do business development here at Brewman. Sam's commercial director. He'll talk more about himself, I'm sure.
Yeah, you've stolen my introduction there. So yeah, I'm commercial director of Brewman. So I generally tend to talk to people who develop new business and kind of expand our company. I've been with the company for about 3 years now.
Excellent. And so we've got some people saying hello already.
Hi.
So that's always good. And so for people that don't know, which even into my ignorance, I didn't until more recently. What is it exactly that you do?
So we do management software. So essentially we started with breweries about 20 years ago. And essentially it's a system for you to manage your raw materials, manage what you've been doing in production, what you've produced, how much alcohol duty you owe the government, which is a really fun thing to work out on your own, and managing your orders, your sales, integrations with your web shop, things like that, and just putting everything into one place so you can manage your stock and duty, and then essentially, run your business through the computers rather than dealing with paper and spreadsheets is the general idea. And we've always done breweries. And then a couple of years ago, we rebuilt the software from scratch to make it more flexible, to make it work on mobiles, tablets, from wherever you are, and also for other industries. So we started doing distillers, particularly, and then soft drinks, cideries, anything essentially usually alcohol related, because duty is the biggest kind of pain in the arse for everyone. So that's kind of why we do alcohol first, essentially.
And you mentioned before we came on air about sort of how it all started, which is quite an interesting story, actually. So could you sort of recount that a little bit for us?
Well, I think I was saying that essentially the company was started by somebody that, wanted to do a bit of software in their spare time, and basically made custom software solutions for people that asked him. And it was just a man in his shed making software. And I think Romsey Brewery was the first one who asked him to make a system to help them with, stock and sales control. And from there, it became, the most popular product that Premier Systems did. And essentially, we are just Brewman now. We only do our one platform that helps producers focus on making their products rather than having to deal with paperwork and trying to find out where stock is all the time.
So let's give an example. Let's say I'm a distiller that I make, because I'm going to make it a little bit trickier for you as well. So let's say I make gin and I make rum as well, right? I'm making both. So I've got some unaged product and I've got some aged product, and the stuff's in barrels, and I don't know exactly what I'm going to do with that yet. It's just there waiting for time to pass, as it is. I describe it as. And I come to you and I kind of say, maybe I've been doing a bit on Excel, or maybe I've been doing a bit on paper here, and I've got this and that sort of thing, and it's kind of a mix of systems. What would be the process? What are the questions? What are the considerations to try and find the fit for me?
Yeah, I think the main thing in that kind of scenario is that causing you any problems? Is there any admin? Are you struggling to actually work out which batch of this did I put into that batch on that day? What was the temperature on that day? Are there things that you need to record either for your own reasons, but also for external auditors? We've got lots of customers that you get Salsa Plus and things like that, where they come in and want to see, right, show me all your records about this batch on that date. And you need to kind of go out and find 20 spreadsheets or find those folders of paper that you stored from 6 months ago. So a lot of that kind of production management is really around processes. So that could be, the batches that you put on that day. What was the ABV on that day? What was the temperature? Another really common thing to look at is losses. Where between movements between different vessels, where was that loss created? How did that happen? And it's all just kind of entering it on your phone or in a computer in the distillery to make sure those records are kind of live and up to date, and preventing you having to build a magnificent spreadsheet, which I've come across many ones that have kind of, been built for exactly the purposes they're done. But, if somebody isn't in, or it breaks, or that it just, it sometimes can be really frustrating for people.
If the person that built the spreadsheet isn't there, or they retire, or
yes,
or
is on holiday for a few days.
Yeah. I'm familiar with a few spreadsheets like that. If they're not the right person, not there, who knows? Who knows how it's going to work? So that's quite interesting. That like first bit you were talking about is that production aspect of it. So you've literally got your phone there as you're doing your run of whatever it is, and you can keep all that. So that's kind of that distillation. You can work out, like you said, the temperature, the run time, all these kind of things.
It's also seeing kind of a virtual representation of the facility. So you're seeing what's in tank at the moment, what has been done to it, what have other people done to it. So if multiple people are working on the same thing, did they do that thing yesterday? So it's all that kind of single record to work from.
Yeah. And then when it comes to like barrel storage and things like that, is there?
So there's two ways of doing that depending on kind of the size of the distillery. So if you're talking about, a few tanks of a few barrels of aging stuff, that would kind of go into that vessel summary screen. So it'd just be another vessel, what's in it, how long has it been there, what have we done to it, recording tests, all of that kind of thing. If you're kind of talking about managing hundreds of barrels, what we tend to do is we would give you these kind of permanent labels to stick on those casks, which have a QR code on them. And essentially you can tell the system that those casks exist. And then you can then scan that QR code to say the batch that I'm currently making has been filled into these containers. So you've got kind of that traceability flow through the system. And then as that sits in aging for 3 years, for example, you can just continuously record, I've just measured this thing on that batch. So you can keep those records up to date. And then when eventually you are done with it, you then move it into packaging stock, and you can fulfill bill of materials like, we used, 100 bottles, 100 caps, a case label, and a cardboard tray to make sure those costs are recorded, that the stock is allocated. But then that liquid then flows through into actual stock, which you can then sell, which you can then trace out to which customers you sold it to. So it's, it's a product that's spent 3 or 4 years being created to sale, but you have the full record of what happened to it, at a moment's notice if you want to look at that record, essentially.
And would that also be the case, as I know some distillers do, they might, particularly if they're doing a lot of maturation, they might keep some casks off-site, either at a third-party warehouse or their own at a satellite location. I guess with the QR code you can do a similar.
So basically the stock locations, you have as many as you like, and that can be, it could be, the warehouse, the distillery, the shop front, it could be external locations, and you basically are telling the system whether that's under bond or not as well. So depending on, different distillers pay their alcohol duty obviously at different stages. Whenever that stage is based on when it leaves that bond. So if you do that in the system, that's when it will say you now owe this duty. So it works for whichever way around you're doing it. And that's generally obviously why we have this kind of alcohol focus, as opposed to some more generic systems whereby that is a really specific thing that we do. So if you're sending off all this stuff under duty dispense, you can record that as a duty dispense transaction. If it is leaving bond, you can say, right, I've transferred this out now, I'm going to pay the duty. So all of that is managed within the system.
What you're talking about there really is like integration of two systems. And I guess that's kind of the whole point of what you're doing, right? Is it's not an Excel sheet here and a book here and kind of and that sort of thing. With the cask management, the cellar management sort of thing, is there space with particular casks to add particular notes about whether it was it's an ex-sherry button?
So this is one of the things. One of the things that we did when we rebuilt the software was a lot of the software kind of terms were quite like choose between these brewery terms. Whereas now you can basically create whatever process you want, and that can be, is it a temperature check? Is it an ABV check? You can create whatever you like, and that could be your process step. So I want to record on day 300. How much liquid is now in this barrel. So you can specify exactly what you want to specify about it, and then record it whenever you want to, and then report on it later. If you want to see that temperature over time in a nice graph, it would auto generate that for you to show that change. It's really about whatever your process is. And a lot of distillers come and say, well, I think my process is very different. We're going to do create a base gin, then we're going to convert it into this type of gin, then we're going to do 5 different flavor types. Again, all of these things are just different stages of a recipe that can all be handled through that system.
So with some of the without naming individual sort of people, but like the distillers that come to you and asked you, and they're using your system, because I've spoken to a few different distillers, and they've been very much singing your praises. And
great.
So it's nice, isn't it? It's nice.
Yeah, very nice.
Here this morning. But what are the sort of problems that they had, and then how you solved the problem with the software? I think that's some good examples would be helpful for people to understand.
I think that the ones we've heard most from distillers are largely around stock and traceability. So where are my raw ingredients? Which batches are where? Which ones did I put them into? Maintaining those records in one place, and then essentially then managing those orders. I think I spoke to one particularly that said they were selling a lot through their online shop. And they had no idea how much stock they had in one location or another at any given time, how much was actually forward ordered and therefore wasn't available to sell. All of this kind of, where do I have the bottles to fulfill the orders on the website? So one of the things that they were kind of really taken in by was we integrate with Shopify and WooCommerce as well. So if you have an online shop running through those, the orders automatically come into Brewman, stock is allocated to them, duty is applied, and then the stock will update the website. So if something goes out of stock, you've got 100 bottles physically there, but you've already sold 100 of them, it will take it off the website because you can't sell any more. So it's kind of that. It's all managing that thing in one place without having to kind of chase around, and people have got rid of whiteboards and pieces of paper that just essentially are this constant kind of what is the truth and where is stuff at the moment. That's kind of a really common thing we've heard from the distillers.
Yeah, and I guess the thing with online is you never really know definitively when the things will come in, when the orders will come in. It happens to be someone happens to mention your gin on TV or something like that. Yeah. And you had no idea that they were going to mention it, and suddenly everyone's
well, good problems to have, but obviously it can be an administrative nightmare.
But 9 o'clock in the evening on a Saturday or something, probably not going to be someone there going, hold on a second.
Yeah, absolutely.
So okay, that makes sense. I had a question here from Bernie. She was wondering how what was the process of developing the system? I know we talked about how it started, but from a distilling point of view, and I know relatively recently that there's been a slight, there's been an adjustment? Is it how it works in terms of?
Yeah, so from a distilling point of view, we basically rebuilt this software from scratch. We launched about a year ago. So the part of making that flexible for distillers was essentially taking out brewing specific functions and then applying them to, if I'm making any sort of alcohol drink, what is the process and how would that work from raw materials in through to the end of posting over to account software? So essentially, do I have generic vessels? What is my alcohol type? What's the liquid? How would that progress from one stage to another? And kind of making sure that whatever the process is, whatever you are making, it allows that customizable, to make it whatever your process is in the system as well. And making sure essentially that things that are important to distillers, like we have a reporting system that is liters of alcohol. So if someone asks you from HMRC, how much alcohol do you have on site? You can immediately just pull a report and say, this is how much is in stock and this is how much is in materials if you have neutral grain spirit or something in the warehouse as well. So it's just making sure, and the more distillers we get on board, the more we hear about those specific problems that we can build in if needed as well.
Mm. And we talk a lot about the sort of production side of thing and the duty side of thing, but I guess it's all the rest of it as well. It's the bottles, it's the closures, it's the tamper seals, it's the cardboard boxes for packaging stuff up, all the individual things for selling stuff online. It's all that stuff.
But it's a two-stage. So once you're done with the vessels, you're basically outputting it into finished stock, and you can determine what is required to convert the liquid into that finished good. So if it's a case of bottles, it's a cardboard box, 12 bottles, 12 caps, 12 labels, some plastic wrapping, some electricity for my bottling line. If you want to add in non-stock costs like electricity or gas, you can add those in and put in units of it to make sure the costs are correctly allocated along the process. But once you have created those finished goods, it's then also about how are you going to sell them, how are you going to distribute them. So there's a CRM feature, prospective leads, you can have stages of a sales process, move them through. If you have sales reps out, they can be using the product on their phone to see, what was the last thing we said to that customer? What do they want from us? What have they previously bought they might want to say again? So all of that CRM is part of it as well. And generally there can be recurring tasks in the system as well. So if you speak to this customer once a month to remind them to do their next order, that can be a recurring thing that pops up for you to say, right, you've got to call them. This is what we said to them last time. So it's kind of that end-to-end process all the way through to what needs to be distributed today, what needs to be picked. If you do local delivery, what needs to be put on the van in what order and what's the quickest way of delivering our 10 drops we're going to do today. So it's kind of, all the way through to invoicing the customers and then sending that across to account software.
And how does it integrate? Because I know some distilleries will bottle off-site. So some do it in-house, but others might send it to Thames or Burlington or somewhere, a number of other places. How does that factor kind of into this?
So there's a couple of ways you can handle it, but essentially what you're doing is you're doing a stock transfer to that location that you've set up as a location in the system, because you're going to be sending things there regularly. And then instead of, for the packaging element, rather than saying I need 12 bottles, 12 caps in a case label, you say I need to pay the transit charge and the external bottler charge and whatever. And then once that's completed, it moves it from that stock location back to the distillery as bottles. But what you've done to create those bottles is a different set of charges and ingredients. So again, whatever it is that creates liquid from one stage to the finished good, you create and then you just run and say this has been done for 100 bottles. So it's all about recording whatever your process is, essentially.
Excellent. We're getting a few questions coming in now, so that's great. So Sophie's is a distiller. She says, excuse me. Does your system, she doesn't say that was me. Sophie says, does your system also control raw material usage? For example, the use of botanicals, when to purchase more, each recipe, etc.
Yes. So basically, once you set up your raw materials in the system, so botanicals, juniper berries, whatever it is that you have, you can do replenishment in two ways. So one is I'm low of something that's important. So if juniper berries gets below 100 kilos, I want to know about that. I want to reorder it. And there's a big list called stock replenishment that shows you by supplier what is below their reorder levels, and you click create PO and it creates a purchase order, and you click send and it will email the supplier a purchase order. If you want to do it based on planned production, because some people don't want stock levels around all the time, you can say, I'm going to do 10 batches of gin over the next 2 months. And then it will say, in order to fulfill that production plan, these are the ingredients you need, what you have currently, what's on order, what would be left once you're finished, and therefore, what are you short of to do that plan? So I'm short of a bit of neutral grain spirit and a couple of juniper berries. And then you click create PO and it creates a PO for everything you're short of, and you order it. So again, it's about replenishing and managing that stock. And then as part of your recipes in the system, you say to make that gin, I need these 9 or so different ingredients in their respective quantities. And it will then automatically say, when you use those have gone out of stock and been put into that tank, essentially. It follows that right all the way through from raw materials to the end of production.
Excellent, great. Hopefully that answers your question, so it's a good answer there. Chris asks, can the software cope with duty suspended spirits as well as duty paid spirits? At times, duty suspended spirit is kept in defined locations within the building whilst it matures, for example, and then when ready for sale, duty is paid and it's relocated.
Yes. So when you create a stock location in the system, you say whether it's under bond or not. So essentially, if you're creating it under duty suspense, it's just in that location. When it's then ready to move out, you have physically moved out of duty suspense, or you sell it from that location, either way, it will then know to apply the duty at that stage. And then basically we provide you with a spirit duty audit report that says these are all the orders or transactions that brought something out of duty suspense, and therefore we think you should be paying duty on that many litres of alcohol at that ABV, and therefore gives you a big number that says this is how much you owe HMRC.
Excellent, thank you very much. Hopefully that answers the question there, Chris. One of my questions, I think, when I sent through to you was whether or not you saw that there are any upcoming kind of issues, management and measurement for distillers. We've got a talk later on, which is talking about kind of dealing with supply line challenges, and of course, with various issues going on in the world, with the pandemic or the aftermath of the pandemic, and with customs and Brexit and all these various other things that are going on in the world. Supply lines are being stretched, or it's harder to get hold of things. I know that's part of something, but and beyond that, any sort of thoughts?
There are a few things. I mean, for things like Brexit, you need certain type of invoice templates now. We uploaded those on the day after Brexit once we realized what they were, because they didn't release them till it actually already happened. But it's those sorts of things that we can react to quite quickly. In terms of the upcoming things, the two major things I could think of were the bottle deposit return scheme, which is going to happen next year. Potentially, it was meant to happen this year in Scotland, but it's then going to happen in the UK probably 2024. So we've already built that for the German way of doing it, just to make sure that we can do it in the system. And then as soon as they've actually released the details of how that will work in the UK, we'll add it UK wide in our system as well. But basically, we've been hearing that that's going to be the biggest admin nightmare ever. Although it's good for the planet, it's going to be a complete nightmare for the businesses that have to deal with it and add deposits onto every sale they make.
So we talked very briefly about this yesterday, but I was intrigued as roughly what have you heard? Not holding you to it, because obviously the financial does not out there. With that caveat, which is there for everyone, but I'm just intrigued as to what you've heard, really.
Well, roughly, because we obviously thought that this was going to be in Scotland for this summer, but it was pushed back to next summer. That's the kind of first one that we're looking at, and then the UK is still massively up in the rest of the UK is massively up in the air as to when that's going to happen. So we're kind of looking at Scotland first. But essentially, it is every time you make a sale, you'll have to have a chargeable deposit on that order and that invoice, and then there's going to have to be a mechanism of return, claiming that back, even though it's going to be the end consumer that's the one that's returning the bottle. So it's very confusing, and there has not been enough detail from the government as to how this will work for us to really kind of say, let's just do it. So we're doing the German one first, just to make sure, if there is a deposit return scheme, this is how we might do it, and then we can adapt it for when the actual UK rules get specified, the day it happens.
How does the German one? Because I'm thinking, like, for someone that they obviously go through quite a lot of bottles, but when and we don't have bottle recycling in Portsmouth, so I just grab the bag of bottles, go down to the supermarket or whatever, and actually there's one where the lid up, and I just pour all the bottles in. There's no paperwork of deposit return or anything like that. So it would be essentially that work.
It would be essentially that the original creator would charge that deposit to the seller, and then the end consumer can just return their bottles and get money back for it at any deposit drop. But somehow that money's then got to find its way back to the original creator, which hasn't really been explained how that will work. So that's all part of this kind of what's it called when they ask the public basically for how they think it should work. Consultation, that's the word I'm forgetting.
Yeah, because I mean, at the moment, I would argue glass is one of the easiest things to recycle, right? Particularly if someone's going to come to your door and pick it up, you just stick it in there. You've got to start queuing, and hopefully it would be automated, but you've got to start putting them in one at a time. And
that's why it's been delayed by a year in Scotland as well. Because
this is my views and not the views of the Craft Distilling Expo.
Yeah, I mean, it will happen. It's just how in which that mechanism will happen and how more or little admin it's going to be. But basically, we think it's going to be a classic admin nightmare. So that's why we're kind of getting ahead of it.
We'll get you back in October 2023.
Sure, as the current expert in it. Yeah. I'll do some reading up beforehand.
We've got another question from Sophie here. Do you help set up each new distillery on the system, and do you also have a help desk for someone? Is there 24/7 support? That kind of thing.
Yeah, so the way it works is basically if someone wanted to go ahead with us, we provide them a member of our support team to be their point of contact, to explain what the setup process is, and kind of do video calls to them regularly to say, this is the next steps, this is how you're going to get your data into a spreadsheet to import, and kind of help you through that process and go live. And that's just all included in the service. Our support's open between 8 and 5 on working days. You can just call or email us, and we have dedicated people. But we do have full help text. So if you click on the software, how do I do this? It will open up our help documents to say, this is how I do a purchase order, and we'll just do it with screenshots. So it should always give you a quick answer and kind of help you with it. In terms of that as well, we do have kind of a free trial account. So at our website at premiersystems.com, you can just create an account. It doesn't auto renew anything like that. It lasts 14 days, and you can just play around with our fake distillery. It's called the Plucky Distillery. And you can see, how would I move, gin into a tank, and how would I do this, and how would I do that? And basically we can kind of take you through on a demo exactly how it would work with whatever your processes are, and kind of explain how it might help you basically.
Excellent. Right. Well, this will be last call for questions. But Carolyn, you've not said anything. I wondered if you had something to add. You're out there in the field.
I thought Sam was doing an absolutely smashing job explaining everything, so thought I'd leave it to him. But yeah, absolutely right. We also provide demonstrations of the system as well. So if anybody wanted to see how it would work, you're more than welcome to reach out, or we can get in contact with you and we can arrange a demonstration, show you how it could be applied to your distillery, and just work through it with you on the call.
Yeah. Yeah, my email address is sam@premiersystems.com. So nice and easy if you just want to kind of leave your name and number and we can kind of get in touch. Yeah, equally, if you do just want to have a little play around and look for yourself, you can do that at premiersystems.com. And yeah, have a play around in your own time.
Excellent. All right. Well, there's some people saying they think the free demo is a great idea, which it is. So I want to thank you both for giving us your time. Really interesting. I think it's given a really lovely overview about things and raised the spectre of the bottle deposit as well. I didn't mean to do that. I have one message from our colleague Danny, who runs the exhibitor side of the Craft Distilling Expo, just to let everyone know that those that are exhibitors, the exhibitors registration is now open, and I've put a link in the chat text here, and there is also an early bird discount which is also in there as well, which is early bird May 22. It's all in caps. That will just be for May. Just a little public service announcement there on the end of this.
I mean, that's useful information for us as well.
Yeah, everyone's really enjoyed your talk. Lots of thanks coming through on the chat. So until I see you again, all the best, mate.
Great.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Thanks for your time.